There's something to be said about the way that vegans view humanity and what they believe attributes value to their own existence. There is a disingenuous disconnect between the way vegans see humanity versus how the rest of humanity sees humanity. They want to reshape the way you value yourself because, just like the vegan diet, arguing for vegan philosophy can also be done wrong, apparently. And the information that you receive from these people changes over time and is completely inconsistent depending on which vegan you speak to.
As you guys all know, I use this dialogue process and argument that I call Name the Trait. So here's the initial question that you can ask. On your current moral view, if all traits true of a given human who has moral value are switched to match those true of a given non-human animal who doesn't have moral value, is there any point in the trait equalization process where moral value is lost? Firstly, we have the question of what is moral value? Then the only other word in there that ever causes confusion is trait equalization.
We tried to ask about NTT, the response was human, but then it's not clear what human means, right? So there's no way to evaluate his position because we don't know what he's saying. So
do you know what it means to be human?
I'd be fine with just, whatever the dictionary says.
No, that's the definition of what a human is. I said, do you know what it means to be human? That would be in a dictionary, right?
I would assume that to be human is to be accurately described by the definition.
Could you Could you find the value of human in a definition of human in the dictionary?
I don't know what that even means. Find the value of. The definition that you gave is actually regressive because the definiendum shows up in the definient. So
do you know what it means to be human?
I'd be fine with just, whatever the dictionary says. So
do you know what it means to be human?
I'd be fine with just, whatever the dictionary says. So
do you know what it means to be human?
I'd be fine with just, whatever the dictionary says.
I don't sit like this because I want to. I have to sit like this. You see, if I were to sit normally, my deductive skills would immediately be reduced by roughly 40%.
If we get into regression stuff, there's just an example that a lot of people on the right have encountered before, which is that there's certain people on the far left who will say a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman, which is regressive, right? Because the term you're trying to understand the meaning of is showing up in its own definition. So from the perspective of someone who doesn't know what they mean by woman, right? They're going to go, what does it mean? And they say, well, it's anyone who identifies as a woman. Well, the very term they just asked for the meaning of showed up in the response. So they still don't know what it, right? So when I say human, I'm using my definition. I don't know what you mean, but
if the standard of defining a word becomes incomprehensible due to having a regressive definition, then how is anybody supposed to understand the original question when the person asking the question is using a regressive definition? It makes the question impossible to answer. And how does one know that two different vegans who are saying these same words are truly even asking the same question, because they might also have their own definition of how they view what humanity is.
That being a human matters, and you don't even know what human is, so it can't matter that much. You can't even describe what one is. It's not that big a deal. It's not that different to any other species. It's not. We're basically identical.
And you can speak to two different vegans who ask you this same exact question, but they both have two different understandings of what it is to be human, what a human being is, or what is it about humanity that we value.
Anyways.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But basically, I think what's important to ask is, what is the morally relevant difference between humans and other animals that would justify exploiting and killing them? Because I can't find it personally.
This question here is a copy and paste format that vegans have. So I'm going to show you something that I find interesting, because vegans within themselves disagree on fundamental moral foundations of their talking points, but can somehow call themselves vegan while revoking the vegan card of another vegan.
So therefore, you as a vegan that advocates for animal rights, you should care about all the millions and billions of animals that have their rights violated in nature as well. So what would you do?
Yeah, so there's a discussion. It's a discussion within the vegan community. I'm not really sure, pretty smooth-brained over here, so those discussions kind of far out my scope.
I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but I don't even think she knows what she stands for. What it sounds to me is that she's just trying to play out the script that another person wrote out for her to say. Because you can't sit here and say, oh, I don't know that answer yet. It's still being discussed in the vegan community. No, if you're going to tell me that I should, must, or it's better for me to be vegan, you need to be able to answer these questions, because this is the logical progression of your philosophy. And you need to be able to take responsibility for what's to come. So I'm not accepting I don't know. I don't know the answer. If you don't know the answer, you need to go figure it out. So where's your moral compass? What methods are you using to guide yourself? You should be able to use that same thought process in order to come to a determination. And I mean, if you don't know, that's fine, but don't tell me how to live when you don't even know how to live it. You don't even know what the right answer is. I've showed you guys this before. This is the paradigm of lunacy. The further to the left you go, the crazier you become. You become a terrorist at some point. Oh yes, kill the human beings to save the plants.
I want you to know that if there was a hypothetical super sentient dog and a human, it would be my moral obligation to save the dog instead of the human.
If you followed veganism long enough, you realize that suffering's not even the problem anymore. It used to be, oh, we need to stop causing unnecessary pain and suffering. Then they said exploitation. Then they moved it to harm. We need to stop causing harm to animals. But now they moved it to a violation of rights. What we're doing as vegans is we're being mindful of the rights violations that are taking place upon animals. And now this is when veganism completely falls apart.
But for what it is, concerning veganism right now, all I'm asking people to be is consistent, within their lifestyle and their behavior when it comes to other animals, to as much as possible and practical, which is veganism. So I don't want to directly contribute to rights violations if I can avoid doing so. There's certain habits that I have in life that mean that I try and avoid that, and veganism is just an extension of that.
And what's funny is that you can see how there's these copycat vegans who they don't get to think for themselves. They have to wait for the leaders of the group to tell them it's okay to think. And then we get to this point, and I'll show you an example.
Like people I've made videos on where I've talked about how what they're doing is wrong, and then they still, even when they agree with me, Penguin Zero even agreed with me, and they still eat meat, then yeah, in those circumstances, I think you're absolutely justified to kill a human being in order to prevent those rights violations. If you saw one person killing many animals, why would that not be morally justifiable to kill that one person to save many animals?
Critical. So I think Vegan Gains won that debate, so I really don't think that Vegan Foot Soldier won the debate. So you guys are just ridiculous. You guys are just brainwashed. So like I said, I really don't care that you guys disagree, because I'm speaking facts. I really don't think that carnivore animals should exist. So if you guys want to disagree with me, that's your problem. Because
So I have 2 points to make here. One, again, humanity will become valueless to the point to where they will treat human beings like animals in order to stay consistent, because to them that justifies their belief system, that its consistency is a validation. It is a self-validation of right, because they've already determined in their mind that the previous statement was correct. So as long as they're consistent with that, then they're still correct. Now, my next point is the logical progression of veganism leads to vegans killing animals in order to, quote unquote, save other animals. This is no longer vegan. That's not just me. I'm not saying that. This is vegans saying that.
Right. But even for me, he's really gone too far now, saying that we should kill all predatory animals. For one thing, it's non-vegan to purposefully kill any animals. This ludicrous position makes it ethical to go trophy hunting and to eat the bodies of animals that make it onto his personal naughty list.
So before I even complete the point I'm going to make, what is the point of being vegan, or what is the point of veganism if veganism does not entail the best outcome for the most amount of animals, because the vegan option may be the option that results in the most deaths and destruction and harm and suffering of animals. Back in the day, they used to say that animals were alleviated from the responsibility of their so-called wrongdoing because they weren't what they called moral agents. But now that went completely out the window, and now animals must be punished for being predators. This is when it falls apart. And what's also interesting is that in the vegan worldview, they get to choose who has the right to life based off of the criteria of veganism. Something that vegans will say is that animals don't get the right to vote. But what if you sat all these animals down and gave them the right to vote and say, hey, would we rather have the vegan option for mass slaughtering us or killing us, or would we rather have the non-vegan option? Let's take a poll, a tally. What do you think the animals would say? Because you guys are wanting to say that you're advocates for animals, but the animals can't even comprehend what you're trying to advocate. If the animals had an option, they may not even choose the vegan option that you're proposing. So the animals don't get to vote for their own alleged rights. You guys get to vote for them. And you guys get to be God and decide who has the right to life and determine what is and what isn't moral. So how can you guys have a divide in the fundamental moral obligation, you call it? And that's why I say vegans cannot clearly define what it means to be vegan, especially as a behavioral pattern.
But if someone is actually working, and as long as they're doing it as far as possible and practical, they are by definition vegan. These include people who have certain eating disorders, very, very, very rare cases of medical issues or obstacles that they have. And again, this is a very, very small number of the worldwide population, and those who live in food deserts where they don't have it as easily as others, where they don't have the accessibility. Veganism is not saying that all these people don't exist. Veganism is not saying that all these people should go 100% vegan, otherwise they're not vegan. It's literally including those people within the definition, within the philosophy, within the community, by saying as long as they're doing it as far as it's practical and possible, they are vegan as well.
In the same way that the gentleman at the beginning wanted to define what it meant to be human by a definition in the dictionary, vegans also fail to clearly define what it means to be vegan. Because look, Hench Herbivore, he just said vegan gains, you're not vegan anymore. You got your V card revoked. And now you can't call yourself vegan anymore because Hench Herbivore said you're not vegan. And I'm sure likewise to your standard, Hench Herbivore, since he's not willing to reach the moral obligation that you are, he's actually the fake vegan. And so if that's the case, but if he gets to be vegan and you get to be vegan, but you both disagree on this fundamental moral point, then I'm vegan too. So the question is, who gets to define veganism? But I mean, the point of this really too is to point out that veganism undermines the human condition and the value of humanity. Because there are even vegans who will say, in order to try to be consistent, because consistency equates to self-validation, that they will kill human beings who try to destroy crops. But I find this funny because weren't vegans saying that people who bring up plants have feelings and lives too are plants rights activists? But the vegans are claiming that they're willing to kill human beings in order to save the crops.
I already put name the trait to myself and said that I would accept crop deaths in the context of humans who were damaging crops and did not have the mental capacity to be reasoned with to stop damaging the crops.
Why is it that veganism gets to choose? It's the arbitrator on who deserves to have the right to life. Because you can hear what vegans are also saying now is that based off of the status of somebody's veganhood, will determine on if they should live or if they should die.